Hi, and welcome to today's Lifelong Learning session. My name is Leslie, and I work at the Purdue for Life Foundation. We're so glad to have you join us today. We have some exciting guests with us today. They're going to bring you Becoming a Brand That Matters, a look into how Purdue has positioned itself as a recognizable brand and how it continues to bring home top honors in the branding business. Before I introduce our speakers, though, I want to take just a moment to share a little bit more about our work here at the Foundation. The Purdue for Life Foundation was established in 2020 by uniting the Purdue Alumni Association and the University Development Office. We engage alumni, friends, and fans through a variety of programs and events, including alumni clubs, affinity networks, travel and volunteer opportunities, student programs, and lifelong learning workshops, such as this one. In fact, we have more than 70 alumni clubs around the country and international alumni networks in more than 100 cities across the globe. This summer, we're bringing the Purdue Women's Conference to campus, as well as the very popular Grandparents University program. The Foundation also includes the John Purdue Club, President's Council, and the Parents and Families Club. So what does all this mean for you? We have coordinated alumni, fan, and friend-related activities and are offering even more ways to engage with the university to help you stay connected, get involved, and give back. Okay, so let's meet our speakers. But first, let me just remind you of a few housekeeping items. Your microphones have been muted. If you do have questions during today's presentation, please enter them in the chat feature, and we'll be sure to address them at the end of Ethan and Kate's presentation today. We're also recording today's session. It will become available on the Purdue for Life website in the coming weeks. So with that, let's meet Kate and Ethan. First, Kate Young. Kate is the award-winning podcast host, writer, and executive producer of This is Purdue, the official podcast of Purdue University. She is a graduate of Purdue's Brian Lamb School of Communication. She spent a few years as a news reporter and PR sports marketing strategist before she fell in love with podcasting. The This is Purdue podcast grew by more than 380% in just 1 year, and she won an American Advertising Award for this achievement. During her time leading This is Purdue, the show has won several podcast awards, including Best Education Series and a Webby honoree. The podcast is also ranked on Apple's podcast top charts numerous times. She's interviewed numerous Purdue icons, including Coach Shondell, Coach Painter, and most recently, Purdue President Mung Chiang. Ethan Braden is joining us today from New York, all the way from New York, so thank you, Ethan. He serves as the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Purdue University and Purdue University Global. Braden leads Purdue University, ranked as one of the top 10 most innovative schools in America by the U.S. News and World Report, and Purdue Global in the pursuit of its mission by passionately positioning, promoting, and protecting the Purdue brand and portfolio worldwide. In 2020, the American Marketing Association recognized Ethan as Marketer of the Year and Purdue University's Central Marketing and Communications as Team of the Year. Wow, that's a lot of accomplishments. So with that, I am so thrilled to have Kate and Ethan join us. So welcome, Kate and Ethan.
It's a pleasure to be with you all. As Leslie said, I'm joining you today from New York, which is a treat and an honor. I picked this room at the local WeWork because it was a brand with the gold background there and black TV. But it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm here, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the presentation here in a second, to actually accept the Fast Company Most Innovative Companies Award this evening at their gala. So nice to be bringing back that hardware, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But as she said, Ethan Braden, I advance my slides here so you can see, but I've been here for 4.5 years. Followed Dan Hassler up here after 10 years at Eli Lilly and Company, and I lead now our organization of marketing and communications of about 100 individuals in our team and another couple hundred across the campus as well as across the system with Purdue Global as well. And most importantly, I'm joined by Kate Young today, who I'll tell you when we have Olivia McCollins I see on the broadcast today from Atlanta, one of our most successful graduate alumni, who also was my intern back in 2019. But she started the podcast, and it was wonderful that when she graduated and moved on and moved to Atlanta and took a big job, we went out and searched for a pro. We didn't want somebody that needed to learn the trade. We definitely wanted to buy the expertise. And as they say with Heinz, good things come to those that wait. And we were fortunate that in waiting, we landed our alumna, Kate Young here, who has led us to new heights entirely with our podcast. So I'll give you the agenda here. I'm going to try to keep us on time. We're gonna jump in here a little bit to the intro and do a little grounding in brand. And then we're going to walk you through the brand evolution that has been occurring here since 2019 and 2020. Show you some of the results in unifying that marketing and the impact that it's had both internally and externally. Then Kate's going to walk us through the highly successful and entertaining podcast for a moment. We'll talk to you a little bit about what's next, and then we'll take your questions. Hope that sounds good. So with that, we're going to start with a video. And really this sets us up for what do we mean when we say a brand, and why did we need this in 2019, 2020?
We don't need a brand. We already have a logo. We actually have a bunch of logos. We already have colors, tons of colors. We have at least 15 different shades of gold. And didn't we already do this? Didn't we just have that 150 years of giant leaps? That's our brand, right? Because that built some momentum. That got us all speaking with one voice. We should build on that. We should do something like that, but get even more people excited about it. Something like that, bring in science and engineering and everything else we're good at. Something like that, but keep it going. Something like that, but more lasting, inclusive, personal, collaborative. We don't need a brand. We need a better way of telling our story. Something that tells the world about Purdue. We have great stories. How can we get them out? How can we get people to pay attention to them? How can we get people to remember them? How do we make them? And how do we get credit for everything that happens? How do we find one way to talk about the millions of things we do? How do we get everybody at Purdue on board? We don't need a brand. We need consistency. We need a way to make everything look and sound like it's coming from the same place. One consistent identity, one consistent voice, at least one thing that's consistent. What if we had that? What if we had one big idea? We don't need a brand. We need answers. What if we had answers to all the big questions? When we stand, why do we exist? What is our one thing? Why do we matter? Why should people care? And while we're at it, what if we had a way to make all our jobs easy? A smarter way to connect all the different things. A simpler way to tell the stories that make Purdue together. That's what we really need. We don't need all that other stuff. We need brand.
So what we needed was a brand. We had a wonderful brand in some respects. We had an incredible reputation at that time for 150 years, incredible alumni and 25 astronauts, Drew Brees and all the everything in between. But at the same time, our marketing was in a complicated and really a house of brands sort of disorganized environment. And so harmonizing that was really the quest. So we're going to walk through just a couple of grounding slides here relative to brand and higher ed, and then we'll get into the exercise that we went through. But needless to say, higher education today, as it was in 2019 and 2020, but particularly post-COVID, increasingly scrutinized, facing a lot of change. It's very crowded, as we'll see. For some, and a growing percentage of individuals are saying that it's perceived to be commoditized, and it's complicated and complex to market. So at the end of the day right now, there's 4,000 degree granting post-secondary institutions. There's 4,000 American, US colleges and universities, all right? And they're all now adopting, in a way that they weren't necessarily 20 years ago, the M word and the B word, those being marketing and brand, something that we got Mitch to say over his time here. But they're throwing major money and major expertise and sophistication at attracting next students and their families, the next researcher, the next partners, the next big investments. And so it's very commoditized, it's very crowded, it's very competitive. Take Indiana alone. In the state, there's 49 colleges and universities where you can get a teaching degree. 49. So if you're a high school senior or junior at North Central High School sitting there in Indianapolis and you want to be a teacher 4 years from then, How do you decide between Marion and Butler and Ball State and IU and Notre Dame and Purdue and on and on and on? 49 choices, and they're all largely saying the same things. Oftentimes, generalizing some platitudes and some wandering generalities here of I'm fearless or live boldly. And frankly speaking, if we were to drive 465 today around the perimeter of Indianapolis, I could change the names of the university and the advertising would remain the same. Moreover, as we'll talk about a little later, as we go into the Purdue global space, when you see the advertising for the online players, they do the same thing, except they strip out all emotion. And so it's a red ocean of imitable features here of online, flexible, convenient, affordable, et cetera. But they're not telling you anything that says where they stand, why you should care, and what they're meant for. Why would you care if they didn't exist? They're a little bit like injury lawyers. They're all just saying, injured, then call us, a commodity in some respects. And so how do you make that decision? When the decision, tree here in the pool looks like a grocery aisle in a French grocery store or a yogurt aisle, it's all through brand. So Neil Blumenthal, the co-founder and co-CEO of Warby Parker, I think hits it really nicely. He says, hey, people will often underestimate the importance of brand. And what we mean by that is just really defining who you are and what you stand for and having a distinct point of view out in the world. And the great Seth Godin says that, just like it takes more than a cowboy hat to make a cowboy, it takes more than a logo to make a brand. I show the basketball shoe there as well. I've got my friend Scott Fusell on the call today. Just as it takes more than a Jordan or a pair of Jordans to make a true basketball player, it's more than a logo, it's more than a tagline, it's more than a collection of colors. What Seth says is, hey, it's the expectations, it's the memories, it's the stories, it's the relationships that all together account for a consumer's decision to choose. That's incredibly important. If there is no choice, there is no brand. So the decision to choose one choice, one product, one service, one university over another. And I take us back to the 97 talk here of Steve Jobs, 97, okay? He said, to me, marketing's about values. And this is a very complicated world and it's noisy. And we don't get very much of the mind space of the consumer to allow them to remember much about us. And no company is going to get that. And so we have to be really clear about what we want to know, what we want them to know about us, where we stand, why they should remember us, why they should care. So imagine 25 years later, how much noisier, more complicated it is when he delivered that message to his staff in 97. So the definition of a brand that we use is that total experience. And it's the one that we create for our audiences, but most importantly, we don't own it. It's how they perceive it. It's in the hearts and the minds of the consumers, of the students, of the customer, whatever you want to define it. But it's that total experience. It's not merely our motion P. It's not merely our gold and black. It's not merely a tagline. It's the entirety of the experience that they have with Purdue University and how they perceive it. So it's the essence, it's the promises we make, it's how we are on the phone, it's how our tours are, it's how we play basketball, it's all of it. And one last to hear from Seth Godin that I love, he says, hey, if you really want to get across town the most efficiently, you can do that with a Suzuki. And plenty of people do that. But have you ever seen a Suzuki tattoo on someone's arm? No. Suzuki's probably not tattoo worthy. But people will pay thousands of dollars to join the tribe that is Harley because it represents who they are and it allows them to tell the world who they are and how they want to be perceived. And so last July, we did a story on National Tattoo Day of this amazing, trend here of folks that have chosen to tattoo Purdue University on their skin, to be walking billboards of the tribe and the pride and the memories and the irrational, not necessarily rational, connections they have to this place. And we believe we have a very tattoo-worthy brand. So as I said, it's a matter of perceptions. It's not necessarily what we say it is, but it's what we're believed to be. We believe it has to be built on a big idea. We believe that it has to be told through fantastic story. And we're using this one with a global a lot right now because I think for the last 4 years, it hasn't been terribly human or terribly emotional. And that is that if the story's not great and if it's not human, it doesn't matter what sort of sophistication or technology you have, it won't save you. Not today and in no time in the future. And so we've been heavily investing, and that's part of what we have Kate here, in this notion of story and storytelling. And we believe we've got an amazing story and stories at Purdue University. And the reality is, differentiating in higher ed, like I said, is around that compelling story. It's not the taglines, it's not the color palettes, it's not the buildings. It's the compelling story about what makes us us And does that draw that student to us or not? Great brands repel as many as they attract. And young people are smart. They don't want to be spammed. They don't want to be marketed to. They don't want snake oil. They want you to win their hearts and minds and their trust, and they vote with their feet. And then lastly, this notion of positioning. The reality is we're not for everybody. And the Purdue student is not the Pomona student, and that's okay. The essence of great positioning is a sacrifice, and you give up some things in order to establish your unique position. Remember Mitch, remarking about New Mexico State, or I'm from Albuquerque, and said, we'll never be doing your laundry. We'll never have concierge service. Well, that's a decision, right? That's a decision about what Purdue stands for, what we're going to do and what we're not, versus maybe what another university thinks it needs to do to attract its students. And at the end of the day, it's about differentiation. It's all around this idea of when I say, I went to Purdue University, I work for Purdue University, I attend Purdue University, a fan of Purdue University. It says a lot about me. And that psychology is incredibly deep and emotional about wanting you to see the tribe I've chosen to join. So the reality is great brands don't just happen. They're built on a clear positioning and a great story. And this is one of our very favorites. We heavily invest in this notion. I spent 10 years at Lilly, and I think that they would say the same thing with this idea. And that is that how well a brand is going to be able to be delivered externally depends on how well the people internally understand it. And we've got a complicated story, right? We're a big place. Across our 2,500 acres, we're a 150-year-old land grant of a $2 billion operation annually with 600,000 alumni out there. We're known as the cradle of astronauts. We've got 13 colleges and schools. We've got our research foundation. We've got Fort Wayne. We've got Northwest. We now have Purdue University online. We have Purdue Global. And we have 3, soon to be 4 polytechnic high schools. So it's a big story across the entirety of that campus. And so how do you convey that, again, in the environment that you have? You can look at our portfolio. And we believe we have one of the most robust portfolios or juggernauts now in the space of higher education. Again, starting from high school and all the way to where we're here from today, which is that lifelong learning and connection that we have with Purdue for Life, and everything in between to satisfy certain needs. And the story really begins, at the 150 years of Giant Leaps, because the reality was at that point we had very disparate marketing. But the 150th anniversary really brought the campus together. It was a big party. It was a chance to get in harmony for the first time. And of that party, the decision was when it ended, were we going to collectively as marketers and as a community go to the after party together, or were we going to go back to our separate corners, our separate brands, and continue to send an inconsistent message, oftentimes to the same people? I like to talk about our friend Dave Moore. Dave Moore is a Purdue grad. He's a Purdue dad. He's an advisor. He was a fraternity man. He's a season ticket holder, et cetera. Imagine his mailbox. And imagine if everyone decides to send their own form of marketing, their own colors, their own fonts, their own message, their own taglines to his mailbox. The cognitive strain, the intellectual confusion that can occur there when he says, hey, don't you guys talk, is what we were giving them in 2018 and before. And so we wanted to leap off of that anniversary in a way that was going to be very unifying. So as I said, there was a lot of good marketing in a vacuum occurring. But you can see this on the left. I don't know if anybody really believes that to be the Purdue University that they know, and bump that up against, our front door, our athletics, and all of these, whether it's hashtags or icons or colors or taglines. Again, do you guys talk? And so the reality was we wanted to tell a clear, compelling, unifying story, especially across the decades moving forward. I love this quotation that no one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it. And we needed to become an orchestra versus a bunch of one-man bands, one-person bands all over the campus. And I love this one as well. I want you to think about this one. Adam Grant, the wonderful author and professor at Wharton, says, worry less about what's on brand. Worry more about what's in character. If I went to work for Southwest Airlines tomorrow, I think I could get in character pretty quickly. And it's a very different character than if I went to work for United. The essence at Southwest is freedom. I can sit where I want. Bags fly free, and I can do the safety message as a rap or a poem. I can get into character pretty quickly there at Southwest, but if I go to United, it's going to be very differently. So the essence for us was, how does Purdue University approach engineering, student life, the liberal arts? What is it to be said that's so Purdue, or the Purdue-ness of it? And that's what we needed to find. And so we needed the differentiating, but unifying brand platform, a freedom within a framework where everyone could find their place. But at the end of the day, the tip of the spear was that gold and black of Purdue University that we know and we love. And so we studied this deeply, of course, really over the course of about 2019. We talked to many, we talked to prospective students, we talked to existing students, we talked to parents, faculty, staff, alumni, employers, peers, and then we scrubbed 1,500 social media postings as really our quantitative exercise to validate what we had seen. We worked with a wonderful firm in Chicago named Brand Trust. We had used them at Lilly before. We've since used them with Purdue Global. They worked with Morton's, they worked with Jack Daniels, they worked with Ram Trucks. They do some wonderful work at getting to the subconscious, the non-conscious, the emotional elements of people's associations and ties to products and brands, et cetera. And with some pretty exhaustive research, I hope you guys enjoy this. We came out with really 6 pillars. I'm going to walk you through those as we get to our positioning, as we get to our messaging and why they matter. But what we heard across the board, across generations, across those sectors were these 6 pillars: accessible prestige, safety and security, shared drive, supportive transformation, thinkers and doers, and a balanced life. So what do we mean by these? These aren't just buzzwords. If you've ever heard someone say, you know, I was on the coast and everyone thinks Purdue's private, or I've heard Purdue be called the public Ivy, or I wouldn't get in there today. This is this notion of the prestige that Purdue University has earned, really not through scarcity over its years, but through excellence. And so we heard many students talk about the accessible prestige nature of Purdue University. They'd say, you know, there was a young man who was an honor student from engineering in Chicago. And he said, you know, I looked across the landscape and I saw Stanford, I saw MIT, and I saw Michigan. And I saw these little bitty admissions rates. And then I saw Purdue. And I knew that I could have the same future, but that if I didn't get in those other places, I thought I could get into Purdue. And that was the accessibility, the land grant mission, the size, the excellence at scale that Mung talks about now. But this notion of this accessible prestige, again, based in excellence, not scarcity, not a pride in the amount of students we can turn away every year. Number 2 was both physical, emotional, mental safety and security. It was this notion of West Lafayette and Purdue University being safe and secure. It was also about my investment in my college decision and my future, and my ability to get a job, my ability to earn or provide for my family was safe and secure. And that was very validating. That gave a sense of being to many of our students and especially our alumni. You know, the reality of doing this work was we needed a common thread across years, across generations of our students. And this was true in the 70s as it was present. This notion, if I went to Purdue, I knew that that aeronautics job that I wanted, that future I wanted, I could have. And I saw that specifically in Purdue University. The third one was this notion of supportive transformation. And the way I sum this up was we had a student say to us, you know, it's me and my classmates against the professor. No, it's actually not. It's me and my classmates and my professor against the material. It was this notion that I have this place to go after the material, that it's okay to transform, that it's okay to fail at times, more collaborative than it was competitive, but never coddled, stretched, but not broken. It was personified as a mentor. Again, never coddling, never wiping my nose, but a hand on the back or a kick in the butt if I needed it. The mentor in terms of the supportive transformation that I would occur or experience while at Purdue. The next one was called Shared Drive, and it's very similar in that respect. But again, it was this collaboration between our students, and the notion that the student said, you know, I don't love to sprint. I'm not a sprinter trying to beat this person next to me. I'm a marathon runner running against my own time. And so it was that collaboration, not the competition, that we saw that unifies that Purdue community. That student talked about the pressure and the competitiveness that he had seen at MIT, for instance, and more of the environment, collaboration and success and personal development that they saw at Purdue. This notion of I'm working to be my best. And oftentimes when I look up, you know, previously from head down, working on being my best, I see that I am the best. Drew Brees, Tamara Markey, others. Thinkers and Doers is all around application. This is not just a cerebral, ethereal experience. This is about we create practical solutions to the world's toughest challenges. We apply. Purdue just works, okay? So this notion of it's not about just the thinking, but it's actually the doing that makes a giant difference. And then lastly, we had a wonderful student as well who said, you know, I want the balance. Happiness for me comes from balance. And it's the notion that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they could get their butt kicked in thermo, And at 7 o'clock, they could be screaming their lungs out in Mackey. They wanted it all. And Purdue provides that in terms of all of the opportunities, the education, the community, and the activities that are present. And so as we boiled that together, we needed a unique positioning, a unique essence. We needed a combination that we believed was ours, was ownable, distinct, differentiating, compelling, but that you couldn't take elsewhere. And for us, the three legs of the stool were this persistence, the doggedness, the Boilermaker mindset of getting after it again and again and again, that engineer's mindset, coupled with the innovation that, puts 27 alumni in space, that's tearing down and bringing down space debris, that's, conquering cancer and other things today, and that innovative spirit that we see in this incredible R1 AAU university. And then couple that with the collaboration that we see at Purdue University. This notion of the persistent innovation together, or persistent innovation together. Our positioning statement says that Purdue is about the persistent pursuit of innovation, where people bring their best and learn to build a better world together. And our value proposition is, again, that we deliver practical solutions to today's toughest challenges so that we can build a better world together. I hope that applies for you. I hope that lands with you, that Purdue, again, is a place that works, but it's innovative. It's persistent. The name on the front of our jerseys mean more than the name on the back. And then ultimately we're applying that to build a better world together. You see that just yesterday in DC with the wildly well-attended semiconductor meeting that we had there. Again, tackling one of those world's toughest challenges right now, or particularly America's. So I told you we were coming off the 150 years of Giant Leaps, and what we needed to do was make a decision. And that was really from a character, from a visual identity, from a creative campaign. Where were we going? What were we going to tell the world we were about? And again, versus those billboards that you see in those earlier slides, how do we be uniquely Purdue? What's the Purdue-ness? How do we own something that no one will? And so again, we thought we had the tip of the iceberg through the 150 years of Giant Leaps, but we knew there was a lot below the surface too, as we think about that freedom in a framework, as we think about multiple constituencies, from that 16-year-old in Gary, thinking about attending Purdue University, the first in their family, to Mike Berghoff, the chairman of our board, who says, I don't necessarily love giant leaps or grand slams. They're rare. I love sustained excellence. So how do you create a marketing campaign, a brand platform that's flexible enough actually to localize to both of them in a way that it feels them? And so we did use this Giant Leaps aspect as our ownable platform. But what we saw was that through the campaign and through the 150th, it was aspirational, it was current, it was very STEM-based, and it was applicable beyond astronauts. But we also got some feedback that it sometimes was impersonal, or that it was intimidating to a student, for instance, that said, I'm not sure I have a giant leap yet, or maybe my giant leap is just coming to Purdue. It's not being the CEO of McDonald's. And so I also need to think about those small steps that come into play. And so as we moved forward, the notion was, again, how do you project one Purdue? How do you go from this, which could be pretty confusing to some, and a color palette that was probably more like Skittles or Sweet Tarts than it was Purdue, to this? We called this a color keto, actually. We said, we're going to be the gold and black and nothing else. We're not going to, relegate those to anybody else. And the blue and maize are pretty strong at Michigan, and they don't introduce a red. Why would we introduce a pappy purple or a magenta or a turquoise? We're black and gold. Let's be it. And in that, we also adopted a new signature logo that, like many schools, Duke, Oregon, Alabama, many, UCLA, we adopted that powerful motion P as part of the signature logo, probably the most well-known and recognizable image or mark that we had at the time. So you can see how that plays out in some of our co-brands here. And then we talked about personality, right? We talked about how does Purdue, if it was personified, approach things like pharmacy, or how does it approach, the liberal arts, or how does student life feel at Purdue, or how would you feel like if it was study abroad? And we said that from a personality standpoint, Purdue's intentional, it's respected, it's innovative, but it's also inclusive, it's balanced, and it's driven. That's how we want people to think about and how they want them to feel about Purdue. And so we bring it all together in the launch materials here that you see on the screen, and everything that you've really seen for the last couple of years. We know that then had to transcend into the incredible story and the stories that we have to tell. We'll get into that next. But at the end of the day, when you think about our brand platform, again, freedom within a framework, that within the same brand platform, we can build our reputation with industry or government. We can demonstrate our impact. We can inspire donors, like the amazing gifts that we've seen of late. But on the other side of that, we can also connect with 16, 17-year-olds as they think about making one of the most important decisions of their lives. So a lot of room to localize, a lot of room to get in character, but again, as one Purdue. So you can see that on the screen of how that's activated in these ways as well. Now, I won't give you our whole COVID presentation right now, but the reality was our launch meeting of this brand was January 28th and 29th of 2020. Something happened 6 weeks later, and that was called COVID. And you'll see here as we get into the lessons, the reality was as we approached COVID, we needed to live our brand just the way we had launched it right beforehand. And so it was Mitch that called me to his office and said, hey, you've just launched this incredible brand. You've skinned our campus with it. You've unified and harmonized across the campus what we stand for, who we are, and what people should care about. And now we got to do it differently. And that's when you saw Protect Purdue, a change initiative to create and reinforce and then sometimes change the attitudes, the beliefs, and the behaviors that we needed to manage and stay open and reopen a 50,000 person campus ranging from 17-year-olds to 80-year-olds and everything in between, and to do that actively, to do that open, to do that safely. And so as you saw our executions, whether it was on campus, et cetera, it was all around how do we protect Purdue? How do we protect ourselves? How do we protect others? And how do we protect Purdue? And again, it was all in campaign. It was all in our personality. It was all how would Purdue versus Pomona versus Princeton respond to its first pandemic? Now, I'll talk to you a little bit about the impact, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kate here. How do we get buy-in? How do you get 55,000 speaking, with one voice? We had incredible support from the top down and the bottom up. It started with our board. It started with Mitch, and it started with Mitch even presenting at our launch meeting, saying to 400 marketers and communicators across the campus, this is about having one voice, organized and aligned around a clear and effective and tested and proven message. So get in line. But what was most important was really the bottom up. People, they embrace that which they create. And so creating a coalition, creating a movement, and then an unstoppable force of individuals across the colleges, across the departments to have their fingerprints all over this work was imperative. We led them through the research. They worked with us as we built this creative. And at the end of the day, they were then advocates. They were little heat-seeking missiles across the campus to say, we believe in this positioning. We believe in this campaign. What's come since has really been our commitment to telling stories that matter. And you see that in our new website called The Persistent Pursuit, which you can see at stories.purdue.edu. But we believe that is the lifeblood of what we have to sell and to show and to love at Purdue. And so we've named that The Persistent Pursuit. It's been around for a year, and it's already experienced 500,000 views and almost 350,000 website visitors. Examples of that would be the storytelling that were just incredible between Allie McNichols and Minnie associated with the Parker sisters and their story and the naming of our 2 dormitories in that regard, and some other impact. So if you go to marcom.purdue.edu, what we've wanted to do is we don't feed the campus. This is definitely a teach to fish environment. We believe that we're not going to feed, but rather we're going to teach it to fish and eat well in the process. And so we have an incredible resource gallery, resources, templates, SAS, all kinds of 10,000 photographs, videos, content packages that allow you to showcase, localize the brand versus have to localize or create yourself. We have our very powerful Purdue Communicators Council, which met 2 days ago, which reaches now about 550 individuals, of creating, again, that orchestra to sing our story. We've got a lead marketer from all of the college and departments in what's called a brand council. And what we've seen is the payoffs. We've seen record enrollment for the last 3 years while others have shrunk and even shuttered dorms. We've seen the growing of our social media followers, but also the engagement and the applause that they've had. And then we've seen some of the recognition that we'll talk about here in a second. We're really proud of a few of these. We think that it edifies Purdue in rare air, and it puts the brand in a space where it should be, which is not just in higher ed, but with Nike, with 3M, with McDonald's. So it's 2 years now running. We're the only university that's been recognized by Fast Company magazine as a brand that matters, of one that showcases, again, emotionally and compellingly what we stand for and why people should care. Then this year, and that's why I'm in New York tonight, probably our most exciting, which was being named not only one of Fast Company's most innovative companies, but number 16 on the list, in front of Disney, in front of NASA, and the only, again, university on the list. Moreover, in their category of education, again, the only university in that category of 10, and we were ranked number 1. And then lastly, excited to be featured for our smart concrete in the next big things in tech with Professor Lynn Liu's work most recently. I'm going to get to Kate here in just a second, but one of the things I want to share with you is just our commitment to YouTube over the last 3 years. In 2020, when we really revamped our storytelling and our video storytelling, believing that the decisions were being made on couches now, not necessarily visiting our campus, we really doubled down in the video storytelling. And during that period that was so critical, more people watched Purdue's central YouTube content in 2020, really that summer, as they were making that decision of where to go in the fall, than IU, Illinois, Ohio State, Georgia Tech, and Michigan combined. Then we did it again in 2021, and then we blew up in 2022. So in 2021, again, with 1.4 million views of our content on YouTube, it was more than Michigan, Illinois, Georgia Tech, Ohio State, and IU together. Last year, with a real art and science combination that we've learned from YouTube and Google in particular, we did almost 28 million views on YouTube last year, including our incredibly successful portfolio piece, which is called What Can You Imagine at Purdue? A beautiful piece about a young lady thinking about and dreaming about going to Purdue Polytechnic High School, seeing her father online, getting his Purdue global degree at night, and then living the Purdue experience. Last year, we did 15 million views of that video just on YouTube alone, with an 80% view duration. YouTube, Google just can't believe that. Yesterday, that video cracked 21 million views. And so where 100,000 view videos were good 2 years ago, now we're shooting for 5, 10, 20 million views. And the art and science that we've learned in conjunction with YouTube, in conjunction with having an incredible creative department, our videographers, Emily Richwine, our creative director, et cetera, have really put this on a different level. I'm gonna skip the Indy 500 commercial right now, just in the interest of time. But I'll tell you one last story before we get to Kate, and that is that last year we adopted a word, we adopted a rally cry as part of our goals, and I brought it to the team. And the first time I said the word, they were a little bit off put. They were a little confused, and I saw the looks on their faces until I explained it. And I said, guys, I want you to think about the feeling that when we put a video out, for instance, during the IU Purdue basketball game, and it airs and you love it, what do you do right after? You look at your phone. You look at your phone to see the texts from our alumni, from our students, from our board, and you look at your phone to see what's happening on Twitter, and hopefully something is. And that word, that verb, is to enchant. And when I talk about to enchant, the definition is to attract and arouse ecstatic admiration and demand for something. You said it again, to attract and arouse an ecstatic admiration and demand for Purdue University. That's what we want to do with our storytelling. We want to attract people and arouse an ecstatic, emotional admiration for this place, for its history, for its people, and create demand to come work for us, to come to school here, to partner with us, et cetera. And so we always love going on Twitter or whatever, Facebook, et cetera, after something has aired and see the reactions. And I love seeing, an IU household, but that commercial was freaking great, right? Or holy, that Purdue Indy 500 commercial was totally awesome. Best I've seen. Whoever produced this one hit the nail on the head. The whole country getting to see our Boilermaker pride on display. All of these were in response to our national ad that we ran last year during the Indianapolis 500, which you can find on YouTube. But that's the spirit. I hope that, as we thought about today, we wanted to inform and educate, but more importantly, we wanted to inspire you all. We wanted to build alumni pride, and we wanted to build the confidence that the marketing largely of your alma mater is in good hands. And so our spirit is really around this idea of when we put something out in the market, it's intended to enchant audiences, both Purdue and non, to create that arousal, that ecstatic admiration for this very special place. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of the most exciting things that we have going on with one of the most exciting people that we have on the team. And that's Kate Young, our podcast pro, to walk you through what's going on with the podcast and all the success and all of the wonderful stories that she and the team have told over the last couple of years. Kate?
Thank you, Ethan. Like Ethan said, I'm Kate. I grew up in Indiana, went to Purdue, so part of why my role is so special to me now is because, I spent 4 incredible years here. So all of the stories, and like Ethan just mentioned, I have friends at Butler, my husband went to IU, my in-laws are from Scotland, and so when they hear an episode and they are enchanted by it and they let me know, that's our goal, is that even if you didn't go to Purdue, look at all the interesting people and things that we're doing at Purdue. So I'm going to go over a little bit about the pieces and parts of each episode, some podcast industry stats. We'll watch a quick podcast trailer with one of our latest VIP guests from Pizza Hut, and then we'll end with how you can find the podcast and how to follow it so that you don't miss an episode. So some of you might be avid podcast listeners, but I want to explain that it's a streamable, downloadable audio form. So what's nice about it is you can listen on the go. You can listen when you're commuting, when you're on a flight without Wi-Fi, running, doing laundry, all of these things. You don't have to be staring at a screen. So it's an up-and-coming medium in a way, but it's something that's really exciting and really evolving. And the way that people and brands are advertising has evolved. It used to be, blogs were the thing. But I think as podcasts continue to evolve and get more popular, every business is going to be saying, we want a podcast. So Purdue's really at the forefront of this. We are the only storytelling podcast in the Big Ten. So I'm kind of waiting for the other schools to copy us. But podcasting has reached the highest number of listeners in 2023. 90 million Americans are listening weekly to podcasts, and that's more people listening to podcasts than have Netflix accounts. And as far as overall industry averages, you might be a little bit surprised at this number. If you have more than 157 listens, you're already better than half the podcasts out there. And 157, you're probably thinking, that's not that many people, but it's different from a website click, or a social media impression. You're asking these people to spend 30, 45 minutes, an hour, sometimes 2 hours with some podcasts, immersing your listeners in our brand. So those numbers are a little bit lower when you think about, some of the higher like podcast or social media impressions, but we are actually in the top 15% of podcasts in the world. If you have 1,200 listens or more per episode in a month, you are in the top 20%. So we're really seeing our listenership grow throughout the past couple years. So creating a podcast and staying consistent, it's a lot of work, and that's why I'll get to a stat here later, but a lot of people create these podcasts and they drop off after an episode or two. So what we do is, we find our Boilermaker guest, we find our story, which at Purdue there's no shortage of amazing people and amazing stories. So then we'll do a lot of research and prep work, and we'll send the guest questions ahead of time. We'll make sure that they're fully prepared and comfortable. Some of our interviews are virtual, but a lot of them we like to meet the guests where they're at. So a great example is Coach Painter. We got to shoot this amazing interview right on the floor of Mackey. And a lot of people loved watching that on YouTube because they have fond memories of Mackey. Everyone loves Coach Painter. So another example is a chemistry teacher at Culver Academies. He is a Purdue grad, and we went to Culver. We took a little podcast field trip in the fall and went to his lab. And so he showed us all of his amazing experiments. You can see, maybe not right now, but there was a picture of him earlier. So Phil Cook, that did really well. He also has millions of followers on TikTok. So that was a great kind of VIP guest that we had. And then after the interview is complete, I'm kind of taking that story and doing additional research. So I'm creating a narrative around the episode, the interview, and that's what also makes this Purdue so special is that you're getting that background research, and I'm adding things that maybe wasn't said in a 45-minute to an hour-long interview. And a lot of podcasts out there right now are kind of that question and answer type of show. So we're creating further storytelling initiatives by having that script. And then you can also, add in awesome sound effects. We interviewed an IndyCar engineer, as Ethan touched on our Indy 500 campaign. We got to go out to IMS, so we have the sounds of the cars revving, the engineers working on the car and the tires and everything. So adding those types of sound effects is also very effective. And then, of course, we have podcast branded graphics, music, and we have an amazing designer. We have an amazing video team. It's a lot of pieces and parts that go into this. So there are 2.5 million podcasts out there right now, but only 450,000 are active. So there's this myth that, the podcast space is so crowded. And really, like I said with the consistency part, people create a podcast and they quit, or they quit after a year. And right now we're on our 82nd episode coming out soon. So that consistency is key, and you can see from the growth that really paid off. So as far as the measurement and metrics, when I say a listen, that's anyone clicking on Apple Podcasts on your phone, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any of those smaller podcast apps. We're on Alexa. If you at home want to say, hey, Alexa, turn on This is Purdue. Those are all counted as a listen. And then also on our Persistent Pursuit page as well, we embed that player code, and that would be counted as a listen. We are also very strategizing with our YouTube and everything that, podcasts and YouTube are going hand in hand a lot lately. They've come out with YouTube for podcasting. So we have an amazing video team. Our first video interview was former President Mitch Daniels, and since then our YouTube strategy for the podcast has kind of exploded. So we've seen great growth there. And, filming those in-person interviews and then taking those amazing quotes or stories or golden nuggets that these guests are sharing, we're atomizing it. So we're putting it onto social. We're taking 3-minute clips and putting those onto YouTube. So we've seen a ton of growth through that. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Ethan, this is just a little glimpse of our growth from 2020 to 2021. And I want to share a quick story. We had, if anyone remembers the Notre Dame versus the big bass drum controversy a couple years ago. It just so happened that the morning that story dropped, our episode on celebrating 100 years of the big bass drum also dropped. So we had our wonderful earned media team kind of pitching that, and it was featured in Sports Illustrated, the Washington Post, all of these national news outlets. And our host platform thought there was some type of a bug in the software because the spike was so high so fast that day. So it was not a great day for the drum, but it was a great day for the podcast and that brand awareness for us. And then from 2022 to 2023, again, really strategizing with YouTube, how we can atomize this content, why people watch versus listen. A lot of people, like I said, they have those fond memories of Mackey, so they want to see Coach Painter, they want to see Coach Shondell in Holloway. So our numbers were up 1,000% with our YouTube views from last year, so that was really exciting. We've also won a couple international podcast awards and distinctions, which is just really exciting for the whole team. Like I said, there's designers, there's project managers, there's videographers, there's so much that goes into these episodes that come out every other Thursday. And then I will show you a quick example of our video strategy with David Graves, who is the president of Pizza Hut. Now, why this interview was so important is because David actually came to us. So he graduated from the business school. He had his PR team find the podcast somehow and came to us. He flew from Dallas just for one night, and we shot this inside a Pizza Hut in Lebanon, Indiana. So here's a quick taste of that.
If you like it, it belongs on pizza.
An age-old question. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Of course.
Thank you.
If you like it, it belongs on pizza.
I like that rule. Okay, so we have to ask, what is your go-to Pizza Hut order?
My go-to, we have to make some pizzas before we leave here. My go-to Pizza Hut order is a thin and crispy pizza with pepperoni and jalapenos.
Oh.
And I like extra cheese on it too, but you got to eat it right out of the oven.
The extra cheese, I see what you mean there.
It's great. Why am I proud to be a Boilermaker? It's an incredible place. that prepares incredible leaders. You think about, I'm part of an incredible community that's done incredible things. How can I contribute? To be able to be a part of that community is really a privilege.
That was, like I said, the president of the Pizza Hut reaching out to us and finding, our show and wanting to come on the show. That's kind of our whole goal of this, right? Is getting these amazing stories, getting these people to come to us with that interest. So really quickly, you can find us at purdue.edu/podcast. On YouTube, it's youtube.com/@. This is Purdue. You can also just Google that and it'll all pop up. But being a Boilermaker, like I said, this role is so special and rewarding. And I will turn it back over to Ethan now.
Thank you for that, Kate. Like I said, couldn't be more excited the day we were able to hire Kate, but I don't know that we had any idea the heights of which she and the team would build what's a podcast. But I think at the end of the day, when you've got almost 1 million views last year on YouTube, you really have a video series as well. And the video production value is so high. If you watch the Kyle Orton from a golf course, if you watch Jim Everett from the Whitaker, if you watch Mitch, and Mitch get a little teary-eyed in the last minutes of it as he talks about what makes him so proud of Purdue, is if you watch the conversation with Sean Taylor, et cetera, it's just beautiful. It's beautiful, excellent work. And Kate does an amazing job. I think her editorializing as well through the podcasts versus just having the conversation adds a ton of value, but that also adds a ton of work. So we're really lucky to have her and a full team that has taken great pride in producing one of the nation's finest podcasts out there. Last week, it was trending number 3 in the education category with some really big names, and it was trending number 15 on the Apple charts overall, total, in front of Rich Roll, in front of Mark Maron, in front of Joe Rogan. It was, it's reaching some really rare air, and it's just getting started. So I'm gonna spend 1 minute on this idea, and I'll ask our Purdue for Life folks, maybe in the future we can come back, especially since it rolled out last week, and we'll tell you the story of Purdue Global and what we've been up to for the last year with it. But at the end of the day, I was going to show you some slides on Purdue Global. I want to get to your questions instead. But I think and for the last 4 years, I don't know that we've definitively, intentionally, proactively told the world what Purdue Global is and the value and why it exists and why it actually fits Purdue's land-grant mission. The notion that Mitch Daniels bought it for $1 is not the most compelling origin story ever. But the notion of there's 40 million Americans out there, and they have some credits, and they've spent time and they've accumulated life experience in the military, et cetera, but they have no degree. That's the land-grant mission of the 21st century, and taking them an education that fits their needs, transcending state lines using technology with the Purdue Global credential now with degrees, et cetera, is really the way that we can live that land-grant mission. Again, for a number of folks who are never going to come as residential students to West Lafayette, but they need something they can trust. They need something that employers have heard of and respect. And we believe that as we continue to Purdue the Purdue Global, we have an entree into a market that's completely different. Think about, a beautiful portfolio, for instance, of Hilton. Yeah, you've got the Conrad, but you've got the Hilton Garden Inn as well. And they've got a common thread of Hilton, but they're for different people, different needs, and that's okay. And so that's what we've been doing with Global. We're going to transform it into a well-positioned and differentiated online solution that's backed by Purdue, that's specifically for working adults, and that really gives that person that's never gotten the degree that redemption opportunity that they told us through so much in market research. And so as you move forward, as you see advertising from Purdue, as we run their marketing moving forward, Purdue Global is our offering online for these working adults that aren't coming to us otherwise. So I'm going to stop there and just hit the very last lessons that I hope have come through today. Number one, we talked about getting in character, and that's not just for our marketers, that's for our faculty, that's for our staff, that's for the way you're treated in the union, that's the way that our call center needs to act. We want to get in that Purdue character. Number two is when you deeply understand your brand internally and you execute it externally, when crises, when pandemics, when curveballs come, you don't throw out the brand playbook and just start seeing what sticks to the wall. You run your play. and we ran our brand. We ran persistent innovation and together, even in our first, worldwide pandemic of this generation of COVID, the way we approached it was in brand. And then lastly, we don't approach marketing as if it's, color dust, logo dust, marketing dust. We don't approach it as random acts of marketing. We approach it that we believe we are creating, changing, and reinforcing desired attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors for our target audiences to collectively contribute to the realization of the goals of our university. And so we've got, a beautiful, sophisticated, disciplined 100-person marketing team these days that I'd put up against anyone, and I'd take them down to Lilly tomorrow and run any brand with them as well. They are doing incredible work, and they're the thing I'm most proud of. This team of marketers could not care more about Purdue University. They're on a mission, and they get the mission. So the last thing I'll show you here is just this wonderful quote. I need to minimize my own screen to see it. But what does it mean when I say, live in the brand? And this was a Reddit comment, this was a Facebook comment from a parent. I'll let you read it, but I'll read it out loud as well. This idea, how we approached COVID was in brand. My son, unfortunately, had COVID last semester. I told my husband and my son that if he got it, I sure hope that he'd get it at Purdue, not back here in rural Illinois. The system, again, let's talk about a school that does not have a medical school, but the work that Eric Barker and so many stood up, this system of assisting students medically and academically was absolutely outstanding. My son's friends were on a campus in Illinois, and they got zero support from their school. And I told my son he was spoiled. And yes, he is. And we're happy he is. Both my husband and I are alumni, and we couldn't be more proud of our son in engineering at Purdue and the university itself. You get what you pay for, and Purdue is worth every penny. To me, that is, again, going back to that total experience, the total experience of the brand and how it's perceived and valued in the hearts and minds of our audiences. So with that, Leslie, I'll turn it back to you as we take a couple minutes of questions, and then on the screen, we'll put how we can be contacted. If you've got thoughts, suggestions, criticisms, complaints, inquiries, etc., please reach out and engage in these social ways. But Leslie, take it from here.
Yeah, very good. Oh my gosh, Ethan and Kate, thank you, first of all. Wonderful. I've heard this presentation a couple times now, and it never gets old, and I learn something every time I listen to it. So kudos to you and your team. You're doing great things. Got a couple questions. Kate, for you. You mentioned that you send questions out ahead of time. Do you get their answers ahead of time, or are you surprised when they answer?
That's a great question. I've never gotten that question before. No, I have no idea what they're about to say. So it's all a surprise. But I will say, if you listen, there's a theme, and it's that Purdue is family, Purdue is community, Purdue is special. But no, I sometimes get just as touched as our guests do, because I don't know what they're going to say. So
that makes it so extra special, right? I mean, I've watched many of your episodes, and you're right. I mean, many times we sit out there and think, oh, it's all scripted, but I think that you can tell sometimes that the emotions play into it, and that, you get at the heart of the matter. So good job. Ethan, I'm sure this one is probably geared more towards you. Somebody was wondering what firm you used to develop your original pillars. Do you remember?
Yeah. So the emotional inquiry work that we did is a fabulous firm in Chicago. It's one word. It's Brand Trust. It's just a wonderful market research firm up there that we used at Lilly. We've used it now twice at Purdue, and we've always gotten our money's worth. They know us, and they helped us build both that emotional inquiry for Purdue previously, and most recently for Purdue Global. Brand Trust.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat. Anything that Ethan and Kate, any parting thoughts you want to leave the listeners with today?
Kate?
No, just thank you so much for coming. It's an honor, and like I said, check out the podcast. Even if you don't listen to podcasts, watch them on YouTube. It's a really cool way to get some chores done. If you have to train for any type of running event, go check out some podcasts, and I promise you'll learn something.
Yeah, I guess I would end. I want to go back to the idea of building pride and building confidence with this group, that your marketing and your communications are in good hands. I'll tell you two things real quick. So we have a annual goal planning and a vision document that we've modeled after Salesforce's V2MOM, which is a vision, virtues, methods, obstacles, and measurements. But we have 4 things that our team wants to accomplish and continues to. The first one is we're going to protect Purdue. We're going to protect our people, our reputation, our brand, our operations, etc. That second one I gave you earlier is we want to enchant audiences. We want you to feel something about your alma mater, about this place that you might be sending your child to moving forward when you interact with our brand. Number 3 is that we're going to transform Purdue Global from what it's been into a thriving and differentiated brand. And number 4 is empower the marketing community. We want the people across the colleges, across the departments to have a Verizon network behind them of assets, resources, support to tell their stories as well. And we do that with really 4 virtues. The notion of optimism. We want to come always believing, in the benefit of the doubt, in the belief of good. And we come at it from a posture of empowerment too, that we are change agents, that we are the catalyst or the driver of brand, not the driven by requests. Number 3 is excellence. We want you to see excellent marketing, communication, storytelling, analysis, etc. And that we're always going to do it, especially in our interactions with you all, with care. So again, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, any of it, we are an open book. Head to marcom.purdue.edu to learn more. Go to stories.purdue.edu where you're going to hopefully be inspired and enchanted. And that's where a lot of the podcast, a lot of our high school material is there, global as well. And then you can contact us by email or whatever you want.
Well, great job, guys. So thankful again that you're here at Purdue University. We can't wait to see what you guys do next. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of Lifelong Learning. Thank you.